Kaya everyone. So Tennille's let you know I'm Sarah Norton. I better add too, I'm Sarah Norton, formerly of Bunbury. So this is pretty local to me today. It's lovely to be back here. Thank you very much to APRA AMCOS for inviting me along to co-host this regional session Keynote with Darren Hanlon. It's a real pleasure to be here with you, meeting on the land of the Wadandi people, and I really enjoyed the Welcome to Country this morning. And as we know, the Wadandi people have been sharing their culture and stories through song for tens of thousands of years, so a perfect place really to have a conversation about songwriting. Okay, Darren Hanlon, hello.
Hi. Is this on? Cool.
Is this thing on? Yeah.
Is it? Oh, yeah.
It is, yeah.
I really am professional, I think. I don't know.
So Darren, as one of Australia's most prominent contemporary folk artists, how are you feeling about sharing your experiences, wisdom and industry secrets from your 30-odd years in the music business today?
Well, I'm up for giving it a go. I've never really done this before, but, yeah, I'll try. Yeah.
That's good news.
No, yeah, I'm all in, 100%. Yeah.
I'm pretty excited. Crowd looks like they're into it. Yeah. That's great.
It's very early for everyone, probably.
It is very, very early, especially to be at a pub.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you for your reflections on a range of different songwriting and industry topics today. But let's start at the beginning. It's a very good place to start. Like a lot of people participating today, you grew up in a regional area. So as a kid in Gympie in Queensland, how did you take those first musical steps towards writing your own songs?
Well, it took a while to be able to write my own songs. I wanted to be a musician, so Mum and Dad pushed me into playing music. I think Mum's always kind of lived vicariously through me. She still does. I wanted to be a maths teacher, and they pushed me into music.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, well, that's universal. But before that, I guess they bought me an acoustic guitar, and then I didn't practice enough. So I said, look, if you buy me an electric guitar, I'll practice more. And then that didn't happen. Well, they bought me the guitar, and I still didn't practice. But it wasn't until I learned how to. Well, I just started singing. I didn't know I could sing. Actually, my grandmother would say, please don't sing. It sounds bad. So I never had much encouragement there from the grandparents. But yeah, Mum and Dad were great. Actually, Dad and I built a little PA system. So I had the Beatles songbook, and I would just go through that singing with this PA in our lounge room. So I'm sure the neighbours weren't too stoked. And then magically discovered Paul Kelly, which is it's a weird thing to think, but at the time Paul Kelly, I mean every Australian song is now cut with at least 10% of Paul Kelly in there somewhere, but back then it was really hard to find anything about him. So I went to a leadership camp for school, and we were sat with different teachers from other schools. And we were sat with this guy we didn't know. He's from Nudgee College. And we were just showing off. We thought we'd gross him out. We thought we'd just talk about really disgusting things so he wouldn't... We didn't want authority figure at our table, basically. But he was really cool, and he just kind of knew the psychology of kids, so he kind of joined in with our disgusting behaviour. But then he said, I've heard about you. You're into music, right? And I said, yeah. And he goes... my brother's a musician. And I said, oh, right. And he goes, I said, who is he? And he goes, well, what's my last name? And he said, Kelly. And I was like, oh my God, your brother is Sean Kelly from The Models. I can't believe it.
No way.
And he went, no, Paul Kelly. And we're all like, We'd never heard of him.
Really?
And he just put out Under the Sun, had just come out with To Her Door, and then, so I got really obsessed. We all did. We all got obsessed with Paul Kelly, and we went back and bought all his old albums, the Dots and all that. And that kind of was a little kind of a legitimacy that you thought, okay, well, you can kind of write these great songs from an Australian perspective. Before that, all I knew was Slim Dusty. But Paul Kelly I was come from Gympie, so you know, you breathe Slim Dusty up there, so you can't get away from that. So yeah, Paul Kelly, and then from there I discovered Billy Bragg, and Billy Bragg was a real another person that, you know, his voice was imperfect. His pitch was a little bit weird. He sung about relationships, sport, all that. That's probably Billy now.
Is that you, Billy?
I'm not here.
He's coming to Fremantle soon.
He is, isn't he? Yeah.
Doing 3 shows. He might be querying the sound check time or something.
I thought, well, you can kind of, you don't have to have this perfect voice, and he just wrote about different subjects that you wouldn't normally hear on the top 40, which is all you could get in Gympie at the time. You could only, you know, we all listened to top 40 on the weekend, and yeah, so they were the kind of the key moments that made me really want to be a songwriter.
Thank you for that. And how about that? An act of rebellion, getting into music rather than becoming a maths teacher. I haven't heard that too many times in the interviews that I've done, so that's a newie. Thank you.
Yeah, they're great. They're great.
You were just talking about Slim Dusty, and I've seen a picture of you as a young chap with Slim. Was it a conscious decision, sort of in a way, to embody that Australian folk tradition in the way that you're a storyteller and you're on the road a lot and that kind of thing?
Yeah, definitely the touring element of it. So when I was really young, jumping ahead, I joined a band at university and we won a campus band comp. I was just the guitarist. I still couldn't write. The singer in that band was a really great writer. I didn't need to write because I was around great writers. I was just a guitar player. But we toured a lot, and around that time I rang Slim Dusty Management, pretended I was my own manager. I've done that. That's a good thing you can do. If you don't have a manager, just pretend you're your own manager. Put a handkerchief over the phone or something. But I did that, and I said, I really want to go on tour with Slim Dusty. Do you have a job? Do you have any jobs at all?
Really?
Yeah, and they got back, and I said, oh yeah, and you know, I manage a band that's on Triple J and all this stuff. Like,
Right.
I was boasting a bit.
Yep.
And they got back to me and said, yeah, sure. We've got a job. We want you to lug the PA, set the PA up, do the lights, do Slim's merch, and be custodian of his hat. So I was exhausted. I did 28. He did 28 shows in 30 days. It was wild. And they were all regional towns. He hated the cities. He did one show in Sydney and it was half full. But, you know, I just love this idea that you could go to Albury and sell out 3 town halls. And it was just this, no one else, you know, does that. We were getting big crowds in the cities and struggling to get crowds in the country areas. So to see this flip side was amazing, and the way he did his shows as well was really great. It was a real family thing. It was a real variety thing. He'd start the show with 2 songs, and then Heather McKean would come on, and then there'd be a comedian, and then a support act. So it was this great, you know, it just rolled through, and I got used to knowing where Slim was going to be at a certain time, and I just happened to be there. And I'd have my questions ready, and I'd say, oh, Slim, what was that song about? And he'd go, oh, yes, young fellow. Well, anyway, I wrote that one on a freight train. And,
very good impersonation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and every night I'd have to hand him his guitar lead, and he would say, he'd go, let's attack him with the ferocity of a saber-toothed tiger. And then he'd spit on the stage and walk out and do his show. Wow. Yeah.
Traditions are very important, aren't they?
Yeah. But they invented touring in Australia. They were doing it, Australian roads were not like they are now, so they were doing it in just like a 2-wheel drive cars and going through creek beds and just amazing things. Like we're still, what we do now is based on what they started.
Absolutely.
And then also bringing it to Aboriginal communities, and he was, and as far as the songwriting goes, I always saw it as folk music rather than country music. I didn't like the have a beer with Duncan and all that stuff. I didn't
Yeah.
really love the kind of gimmicky songs, but there were songs that he would collect from songwriters around, and that made him kind of an Alan Lomax character in a way, because he was collecting stories, and if he hadn't invented the touring, then maybe these stories and songs would have been lost. So I kind of saw it as folk music. Yeah.
That's a really amazing and interesting snapshot of a time in your life, and also, a bit about the Australian folk tradition, who might be hearing about this for the first time. But what strikes me there too is like a bit of a lesson in there about being proactive, calling with a handkerchief over the phone. It's fine, do it, it's good.
That's how I got my first gig with
Yeah.
Billy Bragg too.
Yeah.
I pretended I was my own manager.
Excellent. If there's one takeaway today, people, that's probably it. Thanks, Darren. I'm going to talk about songwriting now, and your songs cover quite a bit of ground, like the explanation in your bio, covering big and complex topics like the politics of love and relationships, through to studies of everyday things that might otherwise be overlooked. How much do you write? Like, are you a 9 to 5 writer like Nick Cave, who sits at a typewriter, or have you got a notebook full of musings? Do you write in fits and starts? How does it happen for you?
Yeah, I wish I could do the. I just don't have time to do the 9 to 5. It would be a dream, but being an independent musician, it's probably these days it's crazy. It's probably like 15% of your time actually goes into songwriting. The rest of it's just all the peripheral stuff. But yeah, I've always probably written in fits and starts anyway, because the songs spring out of life experience. I'm really bad at fantasy, like making songs up from scratch.
Sure.
And even if they are, they're based on an actual feeling that happened, and then you create characters around that. But I always feel like I need to live in between albums to get new material. Yeah, so usually the albums are written in a month or something like that, and I'll go to ground and just do that, because it's like weight training or something. The more time you dedicate to it, you just get better at it over that period of time, and then I always feel at the end I'm a bit exhausted and depleted of inspiration.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, you've got that, I guess it's like muscle memory or something like that.
It is,
so
it's a
you
muscle,
hunker
yeah.
down for that, and you do your thing, and you've got the approaches that work for you. So
Yeah.
great. And so we've talked about the songwriting process in general, and you've talked about, writing in a month. Down to the individual song level, when you're writing one, where do you start, and sort of how does the song take shape, if you can sort of talk us through the process?
Well, there's different kinds of ones, and over the years I've kind of developed these ones. So yeah, I've got all the kind of relationship love songs, and then I've got all these ones about public transport. So they're my two subjects.
Yep. Mastermind topics.
Yeah. So, they started as public or transport songs, because I've been doing so much travelling that things would happen. And the first one was an exercise, and maybe this is something we could do today. I find the story songs a lot easier, the narrative ones, things that have actually happened, and you almost write them like a journalist would write. Mm-hmm. And then, you stick to it straight up. Often, my songs aren't like wildly melodic. I'll find a kind of melody, a simple melody that I like, and then write 15 verses.
Sure.
And if you're lucky, a chorus. So the first one that came up was I Waited for the 17. And that was just a song about missing a bus. I woke up one morning and I hadn't written for a while, and I thought, okay, I want to write a song in a day. I just want to, what's happened recently, and then I remembered this I'd missed a bus in Portland.
Right.
I just got this line, I waited for the 17, but the 17 didn't come. And I thought, okay, well, let's not only write a song in a day, but write a song about basically nothing. And so that was the first one, and that went for about 6 minutes.
Right, pretty long.
Yeah, and then the next one came about because I was on a bus in America which got shot at.
Crikey.
Yeah. A guy missed the bus, and he got his friend to drive out on the freeway, and he just opened fire into the bus. We were all in, a greyhound.
I can't imagine that happening here. Maybe Capel. I don't know.
I should steer clear of that place?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
My family's from there. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I know about them.
Well, Gympie's, yeah, another one of those, yeah. But yeah, so when I got back to where I was staying, someone said, where did it happen? And I said Chattanooga, and then the title Chattanooga Shoot Shoot.
Yes. Pardon me, boys.
I was like, okay, well, I've got to write that now. So that was reverse engineering. I had the title, and then I was like, okay, the title's too good. I have to write this song. So that was the next transport one, and that was I think around 8 minutes. That one. So they're growing. And then the last one I did was an experience I had many years ago where I caught a freight train with a friend from Kyogle to Newcastle, where we basically fell off it. And it took 20 years to write that. I always knew that I wanted to have a song about that. And that one took, a long time to write. But when I finished it, it was about 14 minutes long.
Right.
And I thought, okay, well, that's ridiculous. It's never going to fit on a record.
Maybe just one side.
So I just cut many verses and whittled it down to 11 minutes. Yeah.
A pop ditty.
So look, guys, you're not going to learn how to write a 3-minute radio hit today.
That's a relief, actually.
Yeah.
It sounds like, apart from the sort of song that took 20 years to get there, it sounds like you don't force the songwriting process. But tell me, do you ever get writer's block? And if you do, what do you do about that? Do you work through it? Do you take a break?
I haven't had writer's block. Definitely had periods where you just don't feel like doing it. But I feel like if you try, something will come out, even if it's not the thing that you... The key is the trying. And I think the hard thing that I've had to reconcile is growing up on a farm with people that work really hard. My dad still, he works 7 days a week. He's way fitter than I am. But I've grown up with this ethic, and then suddenly you have this job where you just got to sit in a room all day. So I've had a guilt complex about
Sure.
that. And then you have these days where nothing comes out. But I think you realise that the day that nothing came out, there is still things happening. You're still working in a weird way, but it's really hard to get that through your head when you've grown up doing pretty hardcore manual labour. I don't know about writer's block, but there's definitely long periods of unlocking that where it's there, but it takes those days of sitting around staring at a wall.
Sure.
But as far as the songs go, back to the other question. So there's these narrative ones, but there's also the ones that are mysterious even to the writer.
Yeah.
I'm sure people here have maybe written things that you don't even really understand where it come from, and you might only work it out years down the track.
Sure. What
was that line about?
Yeah.
And you didn't even know. There's so much mystery around songwriting, and I think if we all knew how, if there would is definite steps to do it, we'd do it every day. But it's not. It hurts. Songwriting hurts. The creative energy hurts. It's from a different part of the brain. Your brain will always try and trick you to get back to the maths brain, because the maths brain's very rational, and there's rules that songwriting's outside the rules in a way. So us humans are confronted by that. So it's scary. Yeah.
And along those sort of trials and tribulations of songwriting, how do you check for cliche or unintentional ripping off of yourself or other people in your music?
Cliche is a neighbour that you should just go and borrow a cup of sugar every now and again. You should never move in. And some people move in. Second
top tip for the day.
Cliché's important.
Yeah.
You need it because you need... Yeah, we're all looking back to what's come before, and we'll always get inspiration from what other songwriters have done. And plagiarism's a big part of it. Like, the great songwriters have plagiarised blatantly.
Of course.
So it's just about... And there's only so many ideas. We all have heartbreak. We all have family dramas. We all have political dramas. It's common, like all these things, and that's why songs are relatable. So if you get a good song, you go, oh, you can just fit that like a overhead projection on your own life. So there's only so many experiences that we can have. So therefore, it's the way you spin it. You might plagiarise an idea or an idea that you recognise, but it's the way that you turn it into your own experience and find the angle of the heartbreak or the love or the whatever that suits you, I think.
So important. Yeah.
Yeah. And having, like, all the things I'm talking about, you might have completely different ideas, and that's good. We might have different ways of getting the creativity out. This is the way I do it anyway. Yeah.
It's great to hear about it. And I think this is my last miserable songwriting question. This is like the dark period in these songwriting questions. Do you ever throw songs out, and where is the point that happens? When do you make that decision? Stuff it, it's going in the bin.
I never have.
Really?
No, there's no like box set waiting with all the lost tracks. There might be a few that are sitting, in the iPhone there on the. Well, yeah, no. Having said that, I had a bag stolen in Europe, and it had a iPod with heaps of song ideas that I'll never get back. So but they weren't thrown away. But no, I'll end up going back and using every single thing. Yeah. Everything's been used.
Sure. I mean, even like a junkyard sort of approach where you might go through and just pick out bits and pieces.
Cherry pick, yeah.
Cherry pick, that's nicer.
It's definitely lyrics that have been thrown out.
Yeah.
But and lyrics I wished I'd thrown out. But more so than song ideas.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And so do you ever work with other songwriters?
Rarely. Yeah. I've always found it, because I find the songwriting, this would be interesting today, because I've always found songwriting so private and never in the same room.
Right.
Although, no, I have once. I have co-written, but it's often me loving someone else's song or melody and saying, can I have that? And can I take it away and write lyrics to it?
Right.
So I've done that quite a bit.
Yeah.
In fact, The Unmade Bed is another song from a Sydney band, Sounds Like Sunset. I loved the bass line.
Sure.
And asked if I could have it. So it's that whole melody exists as two songs.
Interesting. So when you're writing, how do you know you're onto a really good song? And do you always know which song people are going to respond to, or do you sometimes get a surprise in what gets the biggest sort of reaction when you're testing these things out? There's a couple of questions in that.
Yeah, let me think. There's certain songs, especially ones about my family, where as I've written them, I've cried. Like I've just felt like an overwhelming emotion, and the first few times that you play it, you get overwhelmed by the emotion, and usually those ones I find work, and people will come up and say, "Oh, that's the one that resonates." So yeah, lots, especially if I'm missing my family from touring, those ones. If there's a great emotion when you're actually writing the thing.
Sure.
And and then. Conversely, the ones the journalistic ones, if you come up with a funny something that kind of makes you laugh, you think, oh well, yeah. If I think it's funny, hopefully other people will. But yeah, often a good tip is if you've got a new song and you're unsure of it. I've done this before. I'll say, oh, I've just learnt Paul Kelly's new song. I'm just going to play it.
Another little cover trick.
Yeah, and then if it goes down bad, just take it away, and the onus is on him then. Yeah.
I hope you're writing these down. You've got a neat little notebook in your show bag there. And so your latest album, Life Tax, was released last year, and it talks about religion, growing old together, writing more songs. How much of the content was influenced by the couple of years that came before it with, quite a few major global events, but personal things for you too, like becoming a father, etc.?
Yeah. Well, that one came about because I'd been granted this space in the Northcote Uniting Church in Melbourne. I'd lived in the street, and I'm always looking for these spaces where I can put events on. If I have friends visiting Melbourne, I can book a hall and put a show on. And so I'd approached the priest about, it's the best venue in Melbourne. It's so cheap, and it feels like you're in a country town. It's just beautiful, and the stained glass windows, and it's not too churchy. It's a hall, so it's it's a lot of wood, a lot of good reverb. Anyway, so when I went down to ask him about hiring it, he said there's a room in the back, and do you know anyone that might want to rent the room? It's $30 a week, and I was like, yes, please. And it was amazing. I had this tiny little room, and it had really high ceilings and wooden floor and stained glass, and I just instantly moved my records and books in there, and a bed, even though he didn't say don't sleep in there, but so it was a period